in what this panel is doing, but more importantly, I need to appeal to this panel to help us save your lives, my life, and everybody's life. We are closer today than we have ever been, ever, in the history of the nuclear era.
He believes that the current tensions between Russia and NATO, especially after Ukraine used Western missiles to attack Russia, have brought the situation to the brink of a nuclear war. Ritter notes that Russia has lowered the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons and has unveiled a new medium-range and hypersonic missile system. These missiles are designed to attack key targets in Europe and, according to Ritter, are capable of destroying NATO defense systems, including Aegis offshore.
They have opted not to, but we have already passed that threshold. At the same time, we have a Rear Admiral Buchanan in the United States Strategic Command who speaks glibly about the America ready to have a nuclear exchange with the Russians. Do you know what that means, a nuclear exchange? It means a nuclear war. We're ready to have one. Russia has lowered its nuclear threshold, and America is ready to engage in a nuclear exchange with Russia as we speak, right here, any moment.
He sees this move by Russia as a direct response to NATO threats and Ukraine's use of attack missiles such as Storm Shadow and Atacama. The missile, which Ritter says is a modernized version of an old Soviet missile program, is equipped with advanced technologies that make it almost impossible for NATO to track and counter it. The missile's unique feature is its ability to destroy targets with high precision without the need for a nuclear warhead. Ritter warns that if NATO does not take the threat seriously or continues to try to confront Russia militarily, the likelihood of a nuclear war will be very high. He says that the West has not yet responded appropriately to Putin's firm message that Russia is ready to counter, which has exacerbated the danger.
From top to bottom, left to right, all of Europe, using non-nuclear payloads. But nonetheless, this would be a Russian strike against NATO. What Russia has demonstrated is that it is ready right now, as we speak, to strike any target in Europe if Europe gives them an excuse to do so. How will Europe respond? Article 5. According to Joe Biden, this is a sacred obligation. Many NATO nations have been leaning forward, waiting for an opportunity for Article 5 because they believed Russia was bluffing, but Russia isn't bluffing. Russia just proved it's not bluffing. And now how does NATO respond to this? Back down, retreat? Too much political capital has been invested.
Larry C. Johnson's analysis of the current crisis and the threats surrounding Russia's hypersonic attack on Ukraine offers a different perspective, combining military and political concerns. In his discussion, he points to issues broader than direct war between Russia and Ukraine, including behind-the-scenes forces in the United States seeking to destabilize and escalate global tensions.
Let me hone in on I think the real thing that is alarming is we don't know who's in charge in Washington. And there's something broader afoot than just this conflict and the potential for a nuclear war between Russia and the United States. I want to remind you on November 8th, when the FBI came out and indicted Fakhar Shakiri for a plot to kill Donald Trump, an assassination plot.
Larry Johnson is concerned about the lack of transparency in key decision-making in Washington. He believes that it is not clear who is really responsible for important political and military decisions in the U.S. government. According to him, this confusion in power increases the possibility of creating conditions that could lead to an escalation of tensions and even nuclear war.
And when you dig into the indictment, the easiest way I can say this is this thing was staged. This was not a genuine plot. The Shakiri was arrested in 2019 in Sri Lanka with 92 kilograms of heroin and didn't go to prison. Well, that tells you right away, number one, DEA was part of that operation. Number two, he became a cooperator because he didn't do time. And number three, my understanding is CIA got involved with it. So you said, well, why would they do this?
Has criticized the Biden administration, arguing that current U.S. policies have exacerbated the crisis rather than reducing tensions. He believes that the Biden administration is moving on a path that has brought the world to the brink of nuclear Armageddon by planning for Russia's strategic defeat. Ritter insists that the only way to prevent nuclear war is to change the political course. He has called on the American people to express their opposition to warmongering policies by holding public rallies and sending clear messages to the government.
And if we continue to call his bluff, call Putin's bluff, call Russia's bluff, there will be a nuclear war. And I'm very concerned that because we are in a very compressed timeline, we have the Biden administration, together with their NATO allies, admitting that they're seeking to Trump-proof NATO, Trump-proof Ukraine, Trump-proof this policy of the strategic defeat of Russia, so that by the time Donald Trump is sworn in as president on January 20th, he will not be able to change any of this. That means that there's a compressed timeline between now and January 20th to get all of this in place, and they can't afford delays, they can't afford pauses, they can't afford doubt.
Ritter has also suggested that the next president-elect, especially Donald Trump, should actively participate in efforts to end the Ukraine crisis. Ritter points to treaties such as the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which he sees as a grave mistake by the United States to withdraw from. He suggests that returning to such treaties could help reduce tensions.
It's related to a weapon that the Russians were developing, the Soviets were developing back in the early 1980s, called the Skorost. And the Skorost missile, 15Ja-66, was quickly developed by then Minister of Defense Ustinov to respond to the planned deployment of Pershing II missiles by the United States into Germany.
Ritter's analysis is a stark warning about the catastrophic consequences of nuclear war. He urges political leaders to take urgent action to avert this crisis. More than a military forecast, the analysis is a call for global action against the threat of total annihilation. Ritter concludes his analysis by calling for a rally in Washington, D.C. on December 7th, urging people to say no to nuclear war.
SS-20 Pioneer, the Mod 3 version of the Pioneer, the SS-25, which was still under development, the SS-27, which was top secret under development. Nobody even knew it existed. And they put it all together in a two-stage missile topped with conventional warheads, and they were going to flood Czechoslovakia and East Germany with these systems and monitor on a continuous basis the Pershing II bases. And the moment the Pershing II went to the field in a in a manner that looks suspicious, they would take it out.
Johnson believes that the deployment of advanced weapons, such as the Atacama Desert to Ukraine, was planned long ago and is not a reaction to recent events. He sees these moves as part of a broader plan to escalate the conflict and perhaps even use nuclear weapons. Johnson believes that the forces behind these crises have inhuman and sinister goals. He describes these forces as those who have no regard for the well-being of the American people or the world and seek to create instability and chaos.
And when you dig into the indictment, the easiest way I can say this is this thing was staged. This was not a genuine plot. The Shakari was arrested in 2019 in Sri Lanka with 92 kilograms of heroin and didn't go to prison. Well, that tells you right away, number one, DEA was part of that operation. Number two, he became a cooperator because he didn't do time. And number three, my understanding is CIA got involved with it. So I said, well, why would they do this?
Stressing the need for a review of policies and increased transparency in decision-making, Johnson warns that the current crisis is more than a regional conflict. He calls on the public and political leaders to look at these issues with a broader perspective and prevent the use of nuclear weapons or the escalation of global instability. This analysis clearly shows Johnson's concern about the current course of global politics and the role of hidden actors in escalating tensions.
There is some effort underway that involves both trying to create a pretext for going to war with Iran under the guise that, Iran's trying to kill Donald Trump, as well as justifying an expansion of the war up to and including the possible use of nukes. And, I can't add anything to what Scott and Steve shared, as well as Ray. But just to point out that let's step back and look at this in a broader, and people say, my God, you're a conspiracy man. No, I just don't know who's making decisions. And I don't think these things that somebody's sitting there in front of a slot machine pulling a lever saying, oh, let's see what comes up this time. There are some people with some nefarious goals involved, and they do not have the welfare of the American people, or for that matter, the people of the world at stake. It's something, I'll call it downright evil that they're trying to gin up. But that's my 2 cents.